And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. Very, very big news. Rassie Erasmus has officially named his side for the Rugby Championship opener against Australia, and it is stacked and very, very interesting. It is Marty Liebach's time. He gets the opportunity in the number 10 jersey. We talked about whether it's going to be him or Andre Pollard or Sashafai Mugomezulu. Well, only Marty Liebach in the lineup. Damian Willemse will be the other option at 10 potentially. Big news is Siya Kolisi has been backed in the number 8 jersey. Very interesting decision. We looked at the fact that they didn't really have a sort of out-and-out number 8 within the squad, and whoever was going to feature in the number 8 jersey, unless it was Kwagga Smith, was always going to be kind of a bit of a makeshift number 8. But Siya Kolisi has been given that task. We've got Eben Etzebeth, Lood de Jager in the lock combination. Very strong front row, very interesting bench. Before we get into it, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Let's have a look, shall we? That is what Rassie Erasmus has named. In that front row, Oxen Chair, Malcolm Marx, Wilco Low. It's our strongest front row we can go with. You know, that is our top 3, especially from a scrubbaging point of view. Wilco Low, destructive, Oxen Chair, one of the best in the world. And Malcolm Marx will get going from the start. In the second row, it's experience next to experience. Eben Etzebeth and Lood de Jager starts together. Really interesting to see, for me, the type of role Lood de Jager is going to have in the Rugby Championship this season. I do think that, he looked really good against the Barbarians. He looks fit. He looks like he's in some of the best condition I've ever seen him. And if he can get back to playing some of his best rugby, then, we've always known we've got incredible lock stocks, but he's one of the best in the world on his day. You feel for Ruan Nokia, who doesn't make the squad, but neither does Zachia Snyman, which is quite interesting. It's a very interesting back row. Marco van Staden in the number 6 jersey, which is what makes space for Peter Steph the Toy to have Siya Kolisi and the number 8 jersey. So it's a strong pack. It's a very strong pack. It's a very good ball carrying and confrontational pack. For me, one of the big things is you have to have a Lood de Jager almost in there, given the fact that we don't have that extra line-out option. We've now only got Eben Etzebeth, Lood de Jager, and Peter Steph the Toy as line-out options. Siya Kolisi doesn't jump in the line-out. Maybe it's something he's been adding to his game recently, but he and Marco van Staden don't offer you line-out options. So that's immediately going to be not a concern, but that'll be somewhere I think the Australians will look to try and target, which is why it's important you've got Lood de Jager in the number 5 jersey, who is one of the best line operators in World Rugby. And off the bench, you then probably have to have then a Franco Mostert, given the fact that he's also a very accomplished line operator. In the backline, this is actually very close to the backline I wanted and I predicted a week ago. The only difference is that Andre Esterhuizen gets a start, and I went with Cheslin Kolbe ahead of Kurt Lawrence. But I tell you what, there's pace on pace in this backline. Grant Williams next to Marty Liebach. That is an absolute superb selection. It really is. Dry conditions up in Johannesburg. This is a team designed to run Australia off the park. There's so much physicality in that pack, and in the back line, there's X factor on X factor. Andre Esterhuizen next to JC Creel. Very interesting to see what might happen in the second half when we see some of the replacements. If you look at the bench, Andre Esterhuizen might not even necessarily come off, but might shift to the scrum, for example. And so our 5-3 split, could actually be, done in such a way that, you bring in 3 backline players and one of your backline players sort of shifts onto the scrum. So you kind of then have a bit of a different way of using your bench there as well. Your 2 wings, Kurt Lawrence, Edwin van der Merwe. Edwin van der Merwe knows that field like the back of his hand. He has scored tries for fun at Ellis Park, and I think that those 3 are so close between them, Cheslin Kolbe, Kurt Lawrence, and then probably to a certain degree slightly behind them is Edwin van der Merwe. 4 tries, 3 games, 5 tries, I think, or 4 tries in 3 games. If he scores this weekend, he'll become the first Springbok to have scored in every one of his 4 matches. And everybody keeps sort of dismissing and saying, oh, well, it was against Italy and Georgia, and then it gets Wales. It doesn't matter. You still score the tries, and especially that game against Wales a year ago when he was man of the match. He is the real deal. He really is. April Fassi backed once again in the number 15 jersey. That backline does not get much stronger. You can bring in a Damien Delendi, you can bring in a Cheslin Kolbe, but that does not get a lot stronger. Off the bench, Bongi Mbonambi, I think a bit of pressure really on Bongi with regards to some of the form he's shown so far. And very interesting to sort of see what his role is going to be. I really enjoyed what I saw with Marnus van der Merwe, and I think that he might get an opportunity next week down in Cape Town. You then got Jan-Hendrik Wessels and Asenate and Tlaba Kanye, also two players I wanted to see in the side. We talk about the fact that we're going to try and extend our depth, but also want to be very competitive. But I think those two players are 2027 World Cup project players. They're not just Springboks of the future players. They are genuine options for the World Cups moving forward, and I'm really, really excited to see what they can do. And it's a bit of an experience really with them coming on in the second half. And we're interested to see how Australia kind of do that, because I think you expect James Slipper to probably start. Angus Bell's a very good scrummager, so I think that we'll see that potential battle between him and Asenate and Tlaba Kanye in the second half, which should be a lot of fun. Franco Masters, one of the players people have spoken about in terms of one of the older sort of players. So, again, a field he knows very well. Played all his sort of Super Rugby there, and was a huge part of the Lions' success. So he'll be familiar with the conditions, as will Kwagga Smith, who covers sort of the back three. But 5-3 split is interesting in itself. We haven't seen the 6-2 as much this year in Caden Moody. Some youth in Asenate and Tlaba Kanye, Damian Willems, there, I think Asenate is about 25, 26. So, and Damian Willems are also still very young. So there's not a lot of players, I think, in the side that, for example, don't necessarily make the next World Cup. Your players that we're going to be watching out for during the Rugby Championship are going to be your Franco Masters, your Kobus Reinachs, your Bongi Manambis, maybe you look at Diago to a certain degree, but in general, you look at that side, especially the starting 15, and all of them very comfortably at this stage get to the next World Cup from an age profile point of view. So not only is it a really strong side, it's a side that's going to play for a while. And that is really, really exciting. And I think that we're going to have to wait and see what kind of side Australia put out on Thursday. But I expect the side to do a job. I expect them to make it really difficult for Australia on Saturday. I expect to play quite a high-paced game. Grant Williams, Molly Liebach, they're going to want to try and up the ante. And I think that if Liebach has a really strong game, I think he can really elevate himself to, inverted commas, the number one position player. I don't necessarily think he'll play against New Zealand simply because we're playing in New Zealand. We expect it to probably be quite wet, quite cold, very different conditions. It'll probably necessitate quite a different game plan. At altitude, dry conditions, you've got to let these players run, and conditioning will be key. And I do think that's going to be the plan. There's a lot of X factor coming off the bench. Damian Willems and Caden Moody. The form that Caden Moody is in at the moment, there's no reprieve for Australia. When he comes on, it doesn't suddenly say the pedal's not going to be taken off. They're going to keep having a go. So I think it's a really, really good side. What do we think? Let me know down in the comments, because we've been waiting to see, and we're always going to see a strong side. I think Rassie Erasmus was quite open about the fact that it was going to be a very good side. That the Rugby Championship, he was going to be turning down the experimentation, for example, and kind of looking to win. And that is a team picked to dominate Australia. It really is. As I said, you don't get much stronger. I really don't think so. A Damien Dealendi, for example, can come into the side ahead of an Andre Esterhuizen. I think the way that Andre Esterhuizen is playing, I don't think there's much between them. But I mean, Damien Dealendi on his day is the best inside centre in the world. Obviously, there's a couple of injuries, and that's for me. When I always look at a team, I always kind of think, if this was the Rugby World Cup, what would change? If it was a World Cup final, what would change in regard to this team? And I don't think there'll be massive amount of changes. I think a Cheslin Colby comes in, a Damien Dealendi probably comes in, and in the pack, if everyone's fit, you've got Jasper Wiese in number 8 jersey, Sia Cleese swaps back to the 6. But ball, apart from maybe like a Frans Malherbe coming back from injury, this is very close to what I believe is our strongest side. I think if everyone's in form, I still think that Damian Willems would have something to say. But it's a really, really good side. And it really excites me that we've gone with such a strong side. But there are still a few, not necessarily experiments, but there's still opportunities being given. So we're still seeing a Jan-Hendrik Wessels, for example, opportunity for him. We're seeing a Asenate and Tlaba Kanye, opportunity for him. We're releasing a Molly Liebach and seeing what he can do. We're seeing Caden Moody coming off the bench. He's going to get more